All right, well, we'll move into a short Dharma talk. And those of you who have been coming for one or more of the last 4 or 5 weeks know that I'm in the midst of a series on the ox herding pictures, which is a series of images and short verses that describe the stages on the spiritual journey. It starts out with us being desperate and confused to understand why we suffer so much, and why others suffer so much. And it leads us through a kind of a glimpse of our true nature, which is really doesn't have a problem with us suffering so much, but actually it allows us to really engage with our experience as a human being in a way that we were fully alive, fully awake, fully connected. And there's a process to that. And then it takes us into a place where we'll talk about it in 4 weeks. But at this point right now, we're at stage 5, which is taming the ox. Now the ox represents our true nature, okay, maybe it's better to say our whole nature, which includes all of our experience as a human and all of our true reality as being one with the entire universe. The spiritual path is one to waking up from the dream of being a separate individual and waking up to the reality of being part of the entire universe. So in previous stages, we have seen the footprints of our true nature. We have glimpsed our true nature. We have caught our true nature. That was the previous stage. And now we're actually taming our true nature. And the verse goes like this: the whip and tether are necessary, else it might wander into mud-filled swamps. When patiently trained, it becomes naturally gentle. Then, freely unfettered, it follows your way. So I'd like to talk about the tone qualities, the emotional tone qualities of each of these stages to give us a sense of what it's like as a human to engage in this spiritual journey, if you will. This stage is concentrated, it's vigilant, it's devoted to discipline, it's respectful of discipline, and it's also patient. Those are the qualities that are manifested here. In the previous stages, I'll just review. In the first stage, we were very confused and desperate. In the second stage, we were adventurous and we were vulnerable as we started to get kind of excited when we saw the traces of our true nature. Then, once we really saw it clearly, we became peaceful, relieved, and then inquisitive. Ah, there it is. Now, what is it? And in the next stage, we caught it. So we actually really started to embody it. And that became a spirited, effortful, and struggling process. So something of the exhilaration of our initial glimpse started to kind of enter a reality check zone. It's like, oh, wow, all right, I got something here. You know, this is a different way of being in the world than the self-obsessed way that I've been all my life, basing everything on my me story and my personality, what I like, what I don't like, the way I want things to go, the way I don't want them to go, the way I want other people to behave and not. You know, how much time I've been spending putting into all that, all the effort, all the draining of energy associated with that, and the obsession and then the suffering when things don't go the way you want them to, or when you lose things that you love. That whole world, that whole way of being, you see, is a very limited way of being. And now you've seen that there's another way to be that isn't based on that story. That's based on real connection, real intimacy, real bravery, and real authenticity. And it's something, great power, is present to you. So as you engage in, all right, I am going to meet this, and I'm going to allow this spirit to guide my life, you realize that it's actually a process of discipline that you need to engage in. So the three main qualities here are diligence, discipline, and patience. Now, those of you who have studied a little bit of Buddhism may know that there are these things called the paramitas, or the perfections, and there are 6 of them. And these are 3 of them, actually, right here. Diligence is known as virya, discipline is known as sila, shila, and then patience is known as kshanti. So here we've got these 3 really land strongly in this phase. The diligence is the determination that we've talked about before in terms of one of the 3 tripods or foundations of any spiritual practice. We talk about faith, doubt, and determination. So this determined effort is what we need at this stage of our practice. It's very, very focused, very energetic, applying ourselves with diligence. The discipline is something that we talk about a lot. And I'll just, remind you of some of the ways we talk about discipline, and Sean may have brought it up in the introduction. In a spiritual practice, we recognize that there's no freedom without discipline. And some of the examples that we give are, say, a violinist, okay, who, because she has practiced diligently with fingering and strokes, day after day, year after year, over and over with that practice. After becoming a master, now she can play anything she wants. She can express her own emotions, she can play other people's music, she can do whatever she wants with that instrument. But there's no way she was able to do that. Another example I like is a skier, okay? If anyone who is not a practiced skier, and I consider myself an excellently terrible skier, I'm completely unpracticed. I can't go anywhere on the skis. I've got no freedom. I have no range of motion on the skis. I'm kind of a very, very limited range. But someone who practices day to day, over and over, week by week, month to month, year by year, can cover this amazing terrain into forests, up mountains, going whatever speed they want. That's freedom. That's the freedom we're talking about here. The freedom to do, the freedom to be, the freedom to express always requires discipline. From a real practical standpoint, we talk about the discipline of our form. This is something that Shoen talked a lot about. So the form that we put our body in when we do a meditation practice is like, we say it's like putting a snake in a bamboo tube. When the snake is not in the bamboo tube, it just wriggles around, as it wants to do, but it doesn't really feel its own skin, and it doesn't really know its own shape. But when you put the snake into the bamboo tube, it hits up against the inside of the tube, and it knows intimately the shape and feel of its own body and skin. Right? So that's the way the discipline is working. With our sitting practice, we have the artificial form of this stillness that we impose upon our body. And we see the way our mind hits up against this static form. It's not always comfortable. Doesn't seem natural, actually, to stay so still for so long. There's a method to this. Because when we see the way our mind hits up against it, we see the habit patterns that our mind typically falls into. And it's the habit patterns that are keeping us from being free. We're a slave to them. But awareness is the first and the biggest step in uncovering and neutralizing habit patterns. So the discipline of the form allows us to see it, and then we can neutralize it, dismantle it, unravel it. I'm going to use a few terms in a bit here about what we're doing with those habit patterns. So this is kind of the heart of an everyday spiritual practice. We can have some initiatory breakthroughs into seeing this different way of living. But there is, I'm going to say always, because it's effectively always. There may be some people who are highly evolved and came into this life with such positive karma that they were able to drop away their habit patterns at a very early age with maybe not a lot of practice. But for 99.99999% of humanity, and certainly for me, speaking from experience, it took many years of diligent practice of recognizing my habit patterns on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute, moment-by-moment basis to really work them out. So most people are doing this for years, okay? And you can even be doing this almost exclusively for 5 or 10 years in a spiritual practice. It's not uncommon at all. It's not uncommon for people who've been sitting for 5 or 6 years to come to me and talk to me about this plateau they find themselves on. And they say it's been a long time since they've had the deep, rich insights that they had, maybe in their 2nd or 3rd year of sitting. And they're wondering about that. Like, have they stalled in their practice, or have they regressed in their practice, or is this whole thing a joke? Is this it? Is this all there is? And it's not all there is, but this is a different quality of work that you're doing, and it's essential to do this work. And it's essential to recognize that the breakthroughs and the big insights are only part of the path. All those really do is they recognize a shift between one place, one way of being, and another way. Gyodo Sensei, the Zen master from the 20th century, a real great one, he says that all of our experiences that we identify with is sort of like feeling like you're in an elevator, and then it's a shift in how fast the elevator is going. So he says even Satori, like this big breakthrough experience, it's only special because it's a shift from what you were previously experiencing life as. But the more connected you feel, and then the more familiar you get with operating in a connected way, it just becomes nothing special. And that's how it works. That's how you want it to be. You don't want to live in this state of constant specialness and ecstasy, bliss, in a sense. That's not real. Those are artificially stimulated states that actually separate you potentially from unity consciousness if you think they're special. So this work it's kind of lateral. You're expanding the ground within which you're bringing your open awareness. Okay, not necessarily going deeper into that, although depth experiences happen as well. But you're learning to be with a non-reactive self, learning to observe and hold your reactions in all of the different ways that your actions get triggered through your life. So it's driving your car, and it's responding to your partner, and it's interacting with your kids, and it's taking a shower, and it's doing your work in the world. All of these things elicit deeply embedded conditioned habit patterns of body, thought, and mind that get triggered many, many, many times a day. And to each one of those, you have the opportunity to bring an awareness that is open, heartfelt, and non-reactive. Over and over, day after day, week after week, month after month, we do this. And by doing this, we slowly broaden the domain of our activity, broaden the domain of our awareness. So you could say that the main work is actually off the cushion during this stage, although you have to maintain the work on the cushion in order to maintain this mind, because very quickly your conditioned mind will take over and you'll be back to square one. You need to work on the cushion to keep it going. So all of this reactivity that gets triggered day by day, these are the mud-filled swamps that they talk about in the verse. And we need the discipline to keep the true self from wandering into the mud-filled swamps. And we have these understandings in Buddhism of what these mud-filled swamps are. This is where the lotus arises from. The lotus arises from the mud. Wisdom only comes from suffering, and healing only comes from pain. You have to experience your life in this way and bring awareness to it so that you can transform. I like the way that Daido talks about this stage in his book, Writing the Ox Home. He says, after the initial breakthrough, spiritual practice has to do with dismantling our habitual patterns and conditioning. That's tougher than any of us can imagine. The illusion of the self is wrapped up in hundreds of threads of thought, activity, and posture. All of the dimensions of everyday life are inundated with our habit patterns, which are dualistic and associated with our condition, permeated by our self-senses. Even after we see that that self-sense is unreal, the conditioned habit pattern kicks in. And boy, it's so humbling to see your reactivity kick up every day. I see it every day, my interactions with my partner, how I'm triggered by certain things. And before I know it, I'm getting angry or defending myself, and oftentimes misinterpreting what she is conveying to me because I've got a filter around what I'm hearing from her. But I will say that years and years of practice have diminished the time it takes for me to get back to clarity and openness with that. So whereas now, in a few minutes, I can realize how I got triggered. Those are things that could have kept me triggered for days or even weeks, and then have the relationship sort of wrapped up in this kind of reactivity echo chamber. It could last for quite a long time, maybe as a subcurrent to the relationship, or maybe even as an overt aspect of the relationship, just holding on to that thing that she said pissed me off. And I didn't tell her, and that pisses me off too. But I'm okay with it. No, I'm okay. No, that's all right. I'm better than that. Oh, man. There's like 3 layers right there. So all those layers just fester and complicate everything else. So it is true, the quicker, we can come to non-reactivity, the more freedom we have, and the more heartfelt we can be. So there definitely is a humility in this stage of the work as we go through the mud, we see our reactivity, And moment by moment, we just learn to neutralize it. But there's also a quiet heroism in this work, and I want to honor that. This is a spiritual warriorship path that we're engaged on. And Trungpa Rinpoche says about this stage, Tibetan Buddhist teacher, but was very conversant with Zen, loved Zen, and did his own set of commentaries on the Oxford pictures, which are just wonderful and bring a whole other perspective to them. And his comment on this stage was, once caught, the taming of the bull is achieved by the precision of meditative panoramic awareness and the sharp whip of transcendent knowledge. The bodhisattva has accomplished the transcendent acts, the paramitas, not dwelling on anything. So the language here is much more kind of heroic, I guess is the word that came to me when I described this. Charismatic and bold. And this is true too. This is heroic work that we're doing. So I want to honor that. And the final thing that I want to recognize at this stage is one of the great blessings of this stage, when the dramatic breakthroughs are perhaps, not regular or available, and it's the hard work of everyday heroism. One of the blessings is the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Because with this work, we have to do the inner work ourselves. No one else can do it for us. But we can't do it by ourselves. We need help. It's the essence of the spiritual path. We do need help, and we find that help in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Sangha is the community of practitioners right here. This is the Sangha right here. When we practice together, we support each other. And when we practice with people who have the same intention to live in openness, to live in awakenedness, which means also to live in non-reactivity, it's so awesome to be able to be in everyday life with those who are similarly committed and intended. It becomes very precious to engage with others who have that same intention, because then you see that same process going on and you can help them work and they can help you work. So we don't do this alone. We can't do this alone. It's impossible to do it alone. And this is the field and the environment of our gentleness and of our freedom. That's how this stage ends. Once we've really disciplined that true self, then we can let go of the whip and the tether, and your true nature moves freely with you in freedom. So that's the fifth stage.